As we continue the push toward decarbonizing our society, our focus naturally falls on electrifying Canada's transportation sector. But the opportunities for electrical professionals in this sector go well beyond the electric vehicle charger in someone's garage. Welcome to the EBPowerCon session, Opportunities in Electrified Transport, with Stephen Koskoletos, who will help us explore the known and perhaps unknown opportunities for electrical pros as we electrify our transportation networks. Stephen is Manager, EV Charging Infrastructure with ABB Canada and is based out of Montreal. He holds a degree in electrical engineering from Concordia with a specialization in power electronics. He is also a member of the OIQ and a professional engineer in Quebec. And joining me now at EB PowerCon is Stephen Koskoletos. Stephen, thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Stephen, thanks for joining me because I think you are very well positioned to talk about electrified transport in Canada. And so, to get the discussion going, when we talk about electrified transport, the electrification of our transportation systems, what kinds of things are we looking at? What are we talking about?
That's a big topic. Typically, when people talk about electrification of transportation, we're talking about moving people from location A to location B um, in a sustainable electrified way. But transportation these days has really expanded above that. Now we're also talking about the transportation of goods that fall into this bucket as well. So that kind of opens up the markets to not just buses and transit, but any trucking business that is looking to electrify its operation to move anything from point A to point B.
So we're definitely talking more than just those well, let's face it, really good looking EVs that people are putting in their driveways and plugging in. We're talking about a lot more stuff here, a lot different kinds of transportation vehicles altogether, and different kind of reasons for having them electrified.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single one of these segments has different battery sizes, different types of vehicles, different types of customers that they service. If you're talking about, for example, an operation that is doing last mile deliveries of any goods, that is a completely different business model than a shunt truck that's moving very, very heavy equipment in an industrial setting.
Man, we've definitely come a long way, and I'll ask you to provide some examples for me. But my first experience with, I guess, what could be called an electric vehicle was years and years ago, working on the assembly line, and there were forklifts that were battery operated, and this is going back some 20 years or so. But now maybe you can just tell me some of the different ways these products, these vehicles have been slowly or are slowly being electrified.
Yeah, absolutely. The market is creeping out into so many different segments. From your forklifts, we started seeing the EVs, the adoption of, the smaller EVs, the ones that had, some range anxiety associated to them, the ones that plugged into your wall to charge, and those over time evolved. The batteries got bigger, range anxiety is still a thing, but much less than it used to be. The chargers got more powerful when the adoption started happening, then other markets started jumping on board, right? You've got your transits, then surprisingly, you can see it a lot in mining. You could see it a lot in airports. You could see it in commercial operations like your forklifts. Uh, Absolutely. So the it's happening a little bit everywhere, and I think the big push was to reduce the amount of CO2 emissions that are out there. And transportation, I know in Canada, is about 25% of all of the CO2 emissions.
When we talk about and look at opportunities in electrified transport, I mean, part of it is definitely guided by the desire to decarbonize, to take away those fossil fuels if we can, and get these vehicles running on electricity. Maybe you can speak a little bit to why this shouldn't be seen as a passing fancy, but this is the way things are going.
It's hard to say exactly because the industry has evolved a lot since we started. It was definitely like a hobby at first, though. It almost felt like the electric car was a gimmick. But when we saw the issues of uh, what we're doing to our planet, decarbonizing, also, electric cars don't really make noise, so our cities are going to be quieter. But one of the main benefits is that the fundamental infrastructure that allows this to be possible is already built. We are already transmitting electricity through cables and wires from power plants all the way to our homes and to our workplaces. So to extend that to, well, why don't we just use that same resource for our vehicles and then gain all these other benefits? Not that big of a stretch. And at least in Canada, we're very lucky. We have ample power generation here, and as industries are adopting, and as the government is helping that adoption, it definitely doesn't feel like a fancy anymore. Way beyond being a gimmick. Now this is the new reality. And I don't know if you've seen, like, a lot of really big corporations are saying things that it seemed ridiculous at the time, but now it's actually going to be true. No more fossil fuel cars sold uh, by 2035, 2040. That's a big statement.
I think I know the headline you're referring to. I think it just came out at the end of January. I think General Motors was saying, no more fossil fuel vehicles by 2035, 2040, something like that. And, these are amazing, bold statements. It doesn't feel like a gimmick. And I surely
Yeah,
would not have foreseen this, even 5 years ago. I know ABB is involved quite a bit with the Formula E racing circuit, the electric Formula One vehicles, and I don't know if that's still going on during pandemic, but even that shows that yeah, you can have fast cars, sportsmanship with electric vehicles. They don't have to be fossil fuel.
yeah. Formula E has been fantastic to us. It's we definitely use it as a platform to experiment with new technologies. As you probably are aware, these guys, they want bleeding edge technology. They want to get that car charged instantaneously because they need to get back into that race. So we definitely use it as a means to experiment with higher power charging, with different technologies that aren't available to commercial yet. And then from there, they trickle down eventually into the luxury vehicle and then to the commercial vehicle market. We see it today. We've got some cars out there that are heavily inspired by the drivetrains that we were driving in Formula E season one, season two, and now they're available for purchase for you and I. And then eventually we'll see that trickle down to maybe being at mainstream in the future. So, a really interesting platform for us.
Now, one of the things that I've been keeping an eye on, and especially in British Columbia, they're just throwing piles of cash at their zero emission vehicle programs. Um, I know typically you need, some government help, some government subsidies to
Yeah.
to quite often get the ball rolling on something. Do you think we're eventually, or perhaps we're already there, kind of at that point where when people are considering their next vehicle purchase, and it might not be, the family car, it could be the vehicles for their manufacturing plant, it could be vehicles for their delivery service. They're going to start thinking about electric vehicles first, maybe even regardless of those government subsidies.
We definitely hope to get there. Right now, government is playing a very big role. You've seen it in BC, but it's happening, I think, across the country. We definitely have three provinces that are pioneering this movement. Quebec, Ontario, and BC are leading the charge. And I really hope that eventually we can move past the I need a government initiative to help me buy my vehicle or to help me subsidize my purchase of EVs for my operations, uh, because it'll just make sense. It'll make sense on its own. And all the issues that we're having today about, is that too much load on the network? How do we even get this done? I already have my fleet. Do I have to buy another fleet? Like, how is this sustainable for me as a business? The more we overcome these immediate issues, the more we'll definitely see the adoption happen more organically than today.
I kind of see it paralleling the experience we've had with renewable sources of generation. You know, the wind power and solar power. At least in Ontario, there were big subsidies. Now, granted, that's still a political hot potato to get that going. But now costs have come down so much that I don't think we need those subsidies to propel that industry, that technology forward. Is kind of standing on its own two legs right now. Do you see that sort of panning out with electric vehicles as well?
I definitely do. It took a while for the renewables business to be taken seriously. One of the big problems they were having early on is that they couldn't sustain base load power, which is the minimum power kind of required at every day. So they were kind of seeing, well, if the wind doesn't blow, we're not getting energy, and if the sun's not out, we're not getting energy. But we've made leaps and bounds in that technology, and now it's okay if the sun's not out; it'll still work. So I kind of see electric vehicles heading that way. There's improvements in battery technology that are happening out there that make range anxiety, and for the family that wants to go, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, or whatever, it's not an issue anymore. And then we've got some really big companies that are supporting an electrified network across Canada. Whether you're going from one province to another, you're still able to charge. These vehicles are extremely intelligent. They have these maps already built into, so you guys already know where your next stop could be. A lot of very smart people are backing this, and it's not just ABB, but all over that are allowing this ecosystem to flourish and allowing the consumer to really understand, you're not alone in this. You're not really figuring this out on your own. You've got everybody behind you. You just have to find out where to go and how to use them. And ABB is definitely playing a role connecting the customer that way.
Well, now speaking of connecting customers, most people who are watching this will be familiar with your typical electric vehicles, your family cars, your Teslas, your Chevy Volts, stuff like that. What I'd like to do, particularly so that people's horizons are broadened in terms of seeing all the potential that could come from an electrified transport network, where else do you see opportunities for electrical contractors, electrical professionals outside of residential chargers or maybe a few novelty chargers in front of an office building?
If we're going to divide the market into maybe cars and other vehicles, the cars is very self-explanatory because without the fossil fuel cars hitting the streets anymore after 2035, everybody buying a new car after then will need a place to fuel up, to gas up. So there's almost no other option at the moment that I can think of than to have something at your house and to have something where you work. That will end up being a staple. But then there's a lot of stuff in between where you and I exist. Like we travel to hotels, we do our groceries at our grocery store, we watch movies, we go to restaurants, we go to the mall, we park downtown in parking spots that are given to us. So all of these like intermediate places between your home and your office become fantastic candidates for car chargers. And if we were to take a step even above that, we're okay. Let's say we're not traveling within our own city. Let's say we're going from city to city. Then the gas stations that are in between there that you'd normally fill up your gas would make a lot of sense for them to have a section dedicated to some electric vehicles that are coming in and out. As we go into bigger drivetrains and larger batteries and more of a commercial operation, more of an industrial setting, transportation, we're already electrifying. We're working with OEMs across the country. They're providing the electric buses. We're providing the infrastructure. We're working with transit agencies to get all that done. But that's more of a behind the fence solution, right? That's not really accessible to you and I as everyday people. But the bus that you're riding on is absolutely being charged by an electric charger. Even operations that are big box stores, they need to get their inventories in there somehow. So that's also kind of in the middle between behind the fence and ready available to consumers as a public charger almost. But you'll see them, behind the grocery store. That truck pulls in, it gets offloaded, clicks in to charge to get to the next grocery store and whatnot. So if you can think of an industry that has a vehicle in it that can go electric, that's the market. So sky's the limit here.
Now you mentioned buses and transit authorities, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were chatting before chatting today, I had mentioned that new Edmonton Transit bus terminal, and you guys were involved with that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the first time in North America that we installed and I'm going to get a little technical, a reverse pantograph. So a pantograph down solution to automate the charging of those buses. It
Well,
was the coolest thing.
well, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that project, just in terms of what's involved, what are the buses doing?
So we were electrifying the existing bus depot, and the technologies that we had available um, we had three, right? We had the click-in charger for the bus. We had the pantograph down, that is a DC rail going from the top of the depot down to click onto the top of the bus to charge it. And we have a third pantograph up solution. Now, right off the bat, pantograph up is not something that's really seen in North America. So we were down to two. And at the time when we were having the discussions, our pantograph down solution was entirely used for high power, like very high power, and that's not what Edmonton was interested in. And I think every transit authority goes through this. Like, for example, if you're a bus driver, are you certified to operate electrical equipment to connect your bus? Probably not, and the maintenance crew that's existing there that goes into the bus after it's parked in the depot to clean it, are they certified to click in an electrical piece of equipment to an electrical piece of equipment? Maybe not. So does that mean you have to have an electrician, a certified electrician at site at all times just to click in the bus? Edmonton really pushed us. And sometimes we definitely need it. So they're like, what if we take this pantograph that's nice and automated and does a handshaking process and all of that, so we don't have to deal with all these other issues, and just feed it less power. And we're like, why don't we do that? You're right. That's a great idea. So we created a nice bracket and we lined up the buses and we figured out exactly where everything needs to go. It is a fantastic display of technology there. So the bus comes in, it handshakes, the pantograph lowers, everything is done automatically, avoids all kinds of headaches. And now they're operating at 150 kilowatts on a pantograph, which normally starts at like 350, 450.
So now, Stephen, ABB has a website set up. I've actually played with it. There's a whole lot of stuff there that you can click on and play with in terms of exploring different things in the way of electrified transport. But maybe you can walk us through one, perhaps involving transit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we put together an ABB cityscape um, called the ABB Transportation app. It's all rendered in 3D, and what we do is we took all our products that involved all of transport, so not just EV charging, but rail as well. We are taking our products and putting them out in the wild, so to speak. So you guys can see what it's like for a typical use case of this product, so you can really wrap your head around what does this look like? Where does it go? How has it been used in the past? So the example for you was the depot solution. So eBus depot solutions, which I'm going to click on. So now my screen is zooming in to the depot solution. And now you've got multiple menus. So we were talking about Edmonton earlier. So if I click on electric vehicle infrastructure, so it would be the third bullet from the top, you'll see that my view pans out and you'll see a nice row of four buses. And on the right-hand side, you see the pantograph down solution. So you could really see what it looks like to take that bracket, install it at the top of a depot, and the way it automatically goes down onto that bus. Obviously, next to it is the pantograph up solution. So if you're interested, you can click on either or. So for example, for this one, I'm going to click on pantograph down, and it gives you a nice little snapshot of what our pantograph looks like, which is a combination of two things. One is the rails that go down, and the other one is the mast that holds it up. In this case, the mast isn't useful because we're using the existing structure to support it, and also the power cabinets that go with it because we need to feed power to it. In this case, for Edmonton, we were talking about earlier, they only needed one.
Now, I will encourage everyone to visit this site, and we'll put the URL up on screen so people can go check it out to explore all the different places in society where electrified transport can exist and for which solutions exist. But now, for electrical professionals, once they've had an opportunity to see all these various places where transport can be electrified, equipment is going to be needed. Equipment is going to be installed. Is Do you think the regular uh, training that a journey person, the regular experience that a journey person has, is enough for these systems? Should there be additional training involved with these systems from your level ones up to however high they go?
Yes to both questions. Depending on the kilowatt, I think any electrician is capable of doing the work. Familiarity is obviously going to play a big deal on this. If this is the first time you're doing it, the installation might be a little slower. You might have a lot of questions. But as you move up through kilowatt chains, you there needs it's more involved, right? We start, breaking concrete, passing conduit, and doing a lot more stuff than connecting to a 40 amp breaker in your home. So that's not to say that standard electrical connections of the higher kilowatts is not possible by the electrician. It just means that more subs are going to come into play, and a lot of coordination needs to get done.
Fantastic, Stephen. One final question for you, and this is sort of the crystal ball question. If
Uh-oh.
you had to look into the crystal ball to see realistically where you see the greatest opportunities in the coming years, maybe the next 5 years or 10 years out. We know about passenger vehicles. We've already talked about battery operated forklifts and stuff like that. Where do you see the next wave of opportunity in electrified transport? And again, I won't hold you to it. This is just crystal ball time.
My crystal ball. Okay. That's a tough question because it's exploding from all seams, all sides. Um, you're not gonna like my answer. I think I'm gonna say everything. So the level business is going to be phenomenal because of the fossil fuel cars being removed from the market. So that's going to see a huge spike in the next 10 years. Um, but we all know the most of the vehicles on the street today are actually trucks. So as soon as the trucking market starts adopting this and stations are put at regular intervals so that operations that are running these electric trucks don't have to worry about making it to their destination, uh, that's going to be insane. I think that's gonna be great in the next couple of years if adoption happens that way. Transit is also a huge market. Right now, we started with pilot projects, so we've seen scales of like 1 to 20, but transit authorities have buses hundreds, 200s, 400, depends who you're talking to, right? And the day we see an RFQ where it's 400 buses one shot, I mean, wow, we've made it. That's going to be great. So it like all markets are booming right now. It's so hard to say.
Stephen, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me at EBPowerCon to talk about opportunities in electrified transport. Now, you and I know that we've only just scratched the surface on all the technologies, all the opportunities that are available. So, how can people get in touch with you if they've got more questions?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are part of any of the industries that I mentioned before, I'd be more than happy to talk more about what we do in that space, how we do it, and how ABB as the entire organization can support you in electrifying end to end any of those segments. Highly encourage you guys to reach out.